Have you ever looked at your mother and wondered if you really knew her? I thought I did, until I found that photo. It was a Polaroid, stashed in a locked box in the attic, showing my mother with a tattoo I'd never seen. The people around her weren't smiling. They were watching her, like predators circling prey. That photo unlocked a secret that turned my world upside down. A secret that put us both in danger. It was a stormy night, the kind where the rain hammers the roof and the wind screams through the trees, making the old house creak and groan. I was in the attic, surrounded by dusty boxes and forgotten memories, searching for old family photos to show my kids. The attic was a maze of shadows, with cobwebs clinging to the rafters and the air thick with the scent of mildew and mothballs. Each step I took sent up puffs of dust, and the floorboards protested under my weight. I had always found the attic a bit creepy, but tonight, with the storm raging outside, it felt especially eerie. The single bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to move on their own. I told myself I was being silly, that it was just an old house settling, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Maybe it was the storm, or maybe it was something else, something I couldn't quite name. As I sifted through a pile of moldy books, my hand brushed against something cold and metallic. I pulled it out and saw that it was a small, locked box, no bigger than a shoebox, with intricate engravings on its surface. It looked out of place among the clutter, as if it had been deliberately hidden. My curiosity piqued. I examined it closer. There was no key in sight, and the lock seemed sturdy. I should have left it alone, but something compelled me to open it. Maybe it was the mystery, or perhaps it was the storm making me restless. I found a hairpin in my pocket and, after a few minutes of fumbling, managed to pick the lock. The box creaked open, revealing a single Polaroid photograph inside. I picked it up, my heart skipping a beat. There was my mother, looking much younger, perhaps in her 30s, with a strange tattoo snaking up her forearm. She stood among men in dark suits, their faces stern and unsmiling, their eyes fixed on her with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. Behind them, I could make out a logo on the wall, something that looked like a stylized eye within a triangle, but it was too blurry to be sure. My mother had never mentioned any tattoo, and she always wore long sleeves, even in the summer. I had never seen her arms bare. And these men, who were they? They didn't look like friends or colleagues. They looked like enforcers, like people you wouldn't want to cross. My hands trembled as I stared at the photo. This wasn't just a snapshot. It was a glimpse into a past that my mother had kept hidden from me. I needed answers. I stumbled downstairs, the photo clutched in my hand, my mind racing with questions. My mother was sitting by the fireplace, the warm light flickering across her face, a book in her lap. She looked up as I entered, her expression serene. But when she saw the photo, her book slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a thud. "Emily," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Where did you get that?" "In the attic," I replied, my voice shaking. "In a locked box." "Mom, what is this? Who are these people?" She rose to her feet, her face pale, her eyes darting to the windows as if expecting someone to be watching. "You shouldn't have seen that," she said, her tone urgent. "It's dangerous." "Dangerous?" I stepped closer, my heart pounding. "What do you mean? Why is it dangerous?" She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "There are things I've kept from you, Emily, for your own safety." But now she swallowed hard, her eyes filled with fear. "We need to leave. Right now." "Leave?" I blinked, confused.
Why?
"What's happening?" "They might have found us," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I'll explain everything, but we have to go. Grab your coat." I wanted to protest, to demand answers, but the terror in her eyes silenced me. I had never seen her like this. My mother, who was always calm and composed, now looked like a cornered animal. She was the woman who baked cookies for school events, who tucked me in at night with a smile. How could she be involved in something so dark? We hurried to the front door, and as she opened it, the storm hit us full force, rain lashing at our faces. I glanced back and froze. Down the street, partially hidden by the sheets of rain, was a black car with its headlights off. I couldn't see inside, but I felt eyes on me, watching, waiting. My skin prickled with dread. "Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "There's someone out there." She followed my gaze and tensed. "Get in the car," she ordered, pushing me toward our vehicle. "Don't look back." We scrambled into the car, and she slammed the accelerator, the tires screeching as we sped away. The black car didn't follow, at least not that I could see, but the sense of being pursued lingered. My heart raced, and I gripped the seat, trying to steady my breathing. As we drove through the rain-slicked streets, my mother kept checking the rearview mirror, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. I sat in silence, my mind reeling. What was she involved in? Who were those men in the photo? And why were we running? After what felt like hours, she pulled into a rundown motel off the highway and killed the engine. "We're safe here for now," she said, her voice still taut with tension. "I owe you the truth, Emily. Let's go inside." We checked into a grimy room, the neon sign outside casting an eerie glow through the curtains. She locked the door and drew the blinds before sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Before you were born," she began, her voice low, "I was a scientist. I worked on a project called Eternal Youth, a skincare formula that was supposed to revolutionize the industry. But it wasn't just about beauty. The people funding it, they had other plans. They wanted to use it for control, for power." She paused, her eyes distant. "That tattoo you saw? It's their mark. The Syndicate, a shadow organization that operates above the law. They're ruthless, Emily, and once you're in, you don't leave." My heart raced. "You were part of this syndicate?" She nodded grimly. "I was young, ambitious. I didn't know what I was getting into until it was too late. When I realized the truth, I stole the research, destroyed what I could, and ran. I thought I had escaped, but that photo, if you found it, they might have too." A chill ran down my spine. "So they're after you? After us?" "Yes," she said, her voice breaking. "And if they know you've seen that photo, they'll come for you too." I felt like the ground was slipping out from under me. My mother, a fugitive? It didn't make sense. She was the woman who had raised me, who had always been there. How could she have kept this from me? "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice small. "We disappear," she said firmly. "I have a plan. But there's something else you need to know, something I've never told anyone." I braced myself. "What is it?" She rolled up her sleeve, revealing smooth, flawless skin. I tested the formula on myself. It worked better than we ever imagined. I don't age, Emily. I'm stronger, faster. But it's also why they won't stop hunting me. They want to know how it works to replicate it. Before I could process her words, a sharp knock echoed through the room. We both froze. "Housekeeping," a voice called from outside. But it was too late at night for that, and something about the tone felt off. My mother's eyes widened in alarm. "They've found us," she hissed. "We have to run." The knock echoed through the motel room like a gunshot. My mother's hand clamped over my mouth before I could gasp, her eyes wide with terror. "Don't make a sound," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding rain outside. She glanced at the door, then at the small bathroom window. "We're getting out of here." I nodded, my heart hammering in my chest. She released me and crept to the window, easing it open with painstaking care. The storm's roar grew louder, and cold rain splattered onto the tile floor. She gestured for me to go first. I hesitated, glancing back at the door. The knock came again, sharper this time. "Open up. We know you're in there." "Go," my mother hissed, pushing me toward the window. I climbed onto the toilet seat and squeezed through the narrow opening, my clothes snagging on the frame. I tumbled into the alley behind the motel, landing in a puddle with a splash. My mother followed, moving with a grace and speed that seemed impossible for someone her age. She hit the ground silently, pulling me to my feet. We sprinted down the alley, the rain pelting us like icy needles. My shoes slipped on the wet pavement, but my mother's grip on my arm was iron tight, steadying me. Behind us, I heard the motel door crash open, followed by angry shouts. They were coming. Who are they? I gasped, my lungs burning as we turned a corner into another alley. Syndicate agents, she panted, her eyes scanning the shadows. They won't stop until they have me and the formula. We ducked behind a dumpster just as two men in dark suits sprinted past, their footsteps splashing through the puddles. My mother pressed a finger to her lips, her gaze locked on their retreating figures. My pulse thundered in my ears, and I fought to keep my breathing quiet. The men paused at the end of the alley, looking around, then continued down the street. They'll circle back, my mother whispered. We need to keep moving. We slipped out from behind the dumpster and hurried in the opposite direction, weaving through the maze of alleys. The storm raged on, the wind howling like a living thing. Every shadow seemed to move. Every gust of wind felt like a whisper of pursuit. I had never been so scared in my life. After what felt like an eternity, we reached an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. My mother punched a code into a hidden keypad, and a rusty door creaked open. We slipped inside, and she bolted it behind us. The warehouse was dark and cavernous, the air thick with the scent of oil and decay. A single bulb flickered to life, revealing a sparse room with a cot, a table, and shelves stocked with canned food and water. We're safe here for now, she said, catching her breath. She sank onto the cot, her face pale and drawn. This is one of my safe houses. I hoped I'd never need it. I stood by the door, shivering in my soaked clothes. My mind reeled with everything that had happened. Just hours ago, I had been rummaging through the attic, blissfully unaware of the danger that lurked in my mother's past. Now we were fugitives, hunted by a shadowy organization that I still didn't fully understand. Mom, I said, my voice trembling, what did you mean when you said you tested the formula on yourself? What exactly does it do? She looked up at me, her eyes weary. It's not just about looking young, Emily. The formula enhances everything: strength, speed, endurance. It slows aging to a crawl. I'm 57, but I have the body of a 30-year-old athlete. It's why they want me back. I'm living proof that it works. I stared at her, trying to process her words. My mother, a superhuman? It sounded like something out of a comic book. But then I remembered how she had moved earlier, how she had leaped from the window with ease, how she had outrun men half her age. It was true. Does that mean, am I like you? I asked, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. Maybe I had inherited some of her abilities. Maybe I could help. She shook her head, her expression pained. No. The effects don't pass genetically. You're normal, Emily. And I thank God for that every day. This life, it's a curse as much as a gift. Before I could respond, a loud bang shook the warehouse door. We both jumped, my heart leaping into my throat. Open up, a voice barked. We know you're in there, Dr. Thompson. My mother's face hardened. She grabbed a backpack from under the cot and slung it over her shoulder. There's a back exit, she said, nodding toward a rusty door at the far end of the room. We'll have to run again. I'm not leaving you, I said, planting my feet. We can fight them together. She grabbed my shoulders, her eyes fierce. Listen to me, Emily. You have a family, children who need you. I can handle this. I've been preparing for this moment for years. But you need to go. Now. Tears stung my eyes. Mom, please. Another bang, louder this time. The door frame splintered. Go, she shouted, shoving me toward the exit. I stumbled backward, my vision blurring with tears. She was right, I had to think of my kids. But the thought of leaving her behind was unbearable. As I reached the back door, I turned for one last look. She stood tall, her face set in determination, ready to face whatever came through that door. I love you, I whispered, then slipped out into the storm. The rain hit me like a wall, and I ran blindly, my sobs lost in the wind. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away. Behind me, I heard the warehouse door crash open, followed by shouts and the sound of a struggle. Then, silence. I collapsed behind a parked car, my body shaking with fear and grief. My mother was gone, captured, or worse. I was alone, hunted by an enemy I barely understood. But I couldn't give up. I had to find her. I had to save her. As I crouched in the shadows, a plan began to form in my mind. I would go back to the warehouse, see if there were any clues, any sign of where they had taken her. And then I would follow. I wasn't enhanced like she was, but I was her daughter. I had her strength in my own way. I took a deep breath and stood, the rain mingling with my tears. The storm was far from over. Emily sat huddled under a tree in the deserted park, the rain pouring down around her. She was soaked to the bone, her teeth chattering uncontrollably, but the cold was the least of her worries. Her mind spun with a chaotic mix of fear and determination. Her mother had been taken, snatched by the Syndicate in a violent clash at the warehouse, and now Emily was alone. The weight of that reality pressed down on her, but she refused to let it crush her spirit. She couldn't just sit here, shivering and helpless. She had to find her mother. The warehouse. It was the last place they'd been together. Maybe her mother had left something behind, a clue, a hint of where the Syndicate might take her. Returning there was dangerous. The Syndicate could still be watching. But it was her only lead, and Emily wasn't about to let fear stop her now. She pushed herself to her feet, legs trembling from exhaustion and adrenaline, and began the trek back through the storm. She stuck to the shadows and narrow alleyways, the rain masking her footsteps. The streets were eerily empty, the downpour keeping most people indoors, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling of unseen eyes tracking her every move. When she reached the warehouse, the sight made her stomach lurch. The door hung crookedly off its hinges, swaying with each gust of wind. She slipped inside, her heart hammering against her ribs. The room was a disaster. Furniture flipped over, papers strewn across the floor, shards of glass glinting in the dim light filtering through broken windows. Then, on the table amidst the chaos, she spotted it, a scrap of paper with her mother's familiar handwriting. "Emily, if you're reading this, they've taken me. Don't come after me. It's too dangerous. Go home, protect your family. I'll find a way back to you." Her hands shook as she read the words, a lump rising in her throat. Go home? How could her mother expect her to abandon her? Tears stung her eyes, but Emily blinked them back fiercely. She crumpled the note in her fist, her resolve hardening like steel. "I'm not abandoning you," she whispered into the empty room. Desperate for something, anything else, she began searching the space more thoroughly. Under the cot where her mother had rested just hours ago, her fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. She pulled it out, a small device no bigger than a phone, with a screen displaying a map. A single red blinked steadily, moving slowly across the grid. Emily's breath caught. This had to be it, a tracker showing where the Syndicate was taking her mother. Hope flared in her chest, a fragile spark in the darkness, but it was snuffed out by the sound of footsteps crunching outside. Panic seized her, and she dove back under the cot, dragging a tattered blanket over herself to blend into the mess. The door creaked open, and two men stepped inside, their voices low and menacing. "Check the place." "She might have come back," one said, his tone clipped. Emily held her breath, her body rigid. Through a gap in the blanket, she could see their boots pacing the room, kicking aside debris. "Nothing here," the second man grunted. "But the boss wants us to find the daughter. She could be useful." "Yeah, leverage against the doctor," the first replied. They rummaged around for a few more agonizing minutes, their presence suffocating. Emily's lungs burned, but she didn't dare move. Finally, they turned and left, slamming the door behind them with a bang that echoed in her ears. She waited until the sound of their footsteps faded completely before crawling out, her pulse still racing. They were hunting her now, believing she held some value, whether as bait or something more. She didn't know. Either way, it meant she had to move fast. She studied the device again. The blinking was heading toward the city center, a steady beacon pulling her forward. Clutching it tightly, she slipped out of the warehouse and into the night, determined to follow the trail. The late-night bus she caught rumbled into town, and Emily sat in the back, her hood pulled low over her face. The city lights streaked past the rain-streaked windows, but she couldn't relax. Every glance from a fellow passenger felt like a threat, every shadow a potential Syndicate agent. When the bus stopped a few blocks from the coordinates on the map, she disembarked and walked the rest of the way, sticking to the darkened edges of the streets. The building loomed ahead, a sleek, modern skyscraper of glass and steel, its polished exterior hiding whatever secrets lay within. Below it, a secure parking garage swallowed up the street-level light. As Emily watched from across the road, a black van, the same one she'd seen at the warehouse, rolled up to the entrance. The gates slid open, and it disappeared inside before they clanged shut again. Her mother was in there. She was sure of it. But how could she get in? The place bristled with security. Cameras mounted at every angle, guards patrolling the perimeter, keycard locks barring every door. Emily was just one person, unarmed and untrained, with no extraordinary abilities like her mother's. She felt small and powerless against the Syndicate's might. Then she remembered her mother's words from their time on the run. If anything happens to me, there are people who can help. Allies I've kept in the shadows. Could they be her way in? She fumbled with the device, finding a small keypad beneath the screen. With trembling fingers, she typed a message. Syndicate has mom. At 47, Elm Street need help. Emily. She hit send and waited, her nerves fraying with each passing second. She couldn't stay exposed like this, so she slipped into a nearby all-night cafe, taking a seat by the window where she could keep an eye on the building. Hours dragged by, the coffee she ordered growing cold in her hands, until finally, the device buzzed. A new message appeared. Meet at Old Clock Tower, midnight. Come alone. It was a gamble, trusting an unknown contact could lead her straight into a trap. But she had no other options. She left the cafe and made her way to the clock tower, the city's ominous hum pressing in around her. She arrived just as the clock struck midnight, its deep chimes reverberating through the empty square. A figure stepped out from the shadows, a woman in her 40s, with sharp features and a cautious, appraising gaze. "You're Emily?" she asked, her voice low. "Yes," Emily replied, her throat dry. "Are you a friend of my mother's?" The woman hesitated. "Let's just say we have a common enemy. I'm Lena. We need to talk, but not here. Follow me." Lena led her to a small, dimly lit apartment a few blocks away. Once inside, she bolted the door and drew the blinds, casting the room into a claustrophobic hush. "Your mother and I worked together years ago, before she broke away from the Syndicate," Lena began, her tone measured. "We've been trying to dismantle them ever since. We have a plan to infiltrate their facility and get her out, but it's risky. Are you sure you're ready for this?" Emily met her gaze, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "I have to save her." Lena studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "All right. But you need to understand what we're up against. The Syndicate is powerful, ruthless, and they don't tolerate meddling. Once we start this, there's no turning back." "I understand," Emily said, clenching her fists to steady herself. "Then let's get to work," Lena replied, pulling a folded map from her jacket and spreading it across the table. "Here's how we're going to rescue your mother." Emily stood in Lena's cramped apartment, her hands trembling slightly as she fastened the utility belt Lena had handed her. It held a stun gun, a lockpick set, and a small flashlight, tools that felt alien in her inexperienced hands. Across the room, Lena moved with quiet precision, checking her own gear and giving the Syndicate facility's blueprint one final glance. "Remember," Lena said, her voice steady but firm, "we get in, find your mother, and get out. No heroics. If things go south, we abort." Emily nodded, swallowing the knot of fear in her throat. She wasn't a spy or a soldier, just an ordinary woman driven by desperation. But she couldn't falter now. Her mother's life hung in the balance. They slipped out into the night, the city's neon lights reflecting off the wet pavement. The Syndicate's facility towered ahead, a sleek monolith of glass and steel that seemed to pulse with menace. Emily tugged her maintenance cap low over her eyes, the stiff uniform scratching against her skin. Beside her, Lena radiated a quiet confidence that Emily clung to like a lifeline. At the service entrance, they swiped their forged IDs. The reader beeped green, and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Emily's heart thudded as they stepped into a stark white corridor, the air buzzing with the hum of machinery. They moved swiftly, their footsteps nearly silent against the polished floor. But as they passed a security station, a guard looked up from his monitor. "Hey, you two. Let me see your IDs." Lena stepped forward, flashing her badge with a practiced smile. "We're new. Just started today." The guard's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across his face. "Wait, I don't recognize you." Before he could reach for his radio, Lena struck a swift chop to his neck. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious. "Go," Lena hissed. They bolted down the corridor, but the damage was done. An alarm shrieked to life, red lights flashing along the walls. Emily's pulse raced as they darted into a side passage, the sound of pounding boots echoing behind them. "Plan B," Lena muttered, pulling a small device from her pocket. She attached it to a locked door, and with a faint click it swung open. They slipped into a dimly lit storage room, pressing themselves against the wall. Emily struggled to steady her breathing. "What now?" "We're off the map," Lena said, her voice tight. "But I think I can get us to the detention level through the vents." She pried open a ceiling grate, and they clambered into the narrow duct, crawling on hands and knees. The cold metal pressed against Emily's palms, the confined space amplifying every sound. After several tense minutes, they dropped into another corridor lined with reinforced doors. Emily peered through the small windows until she spotted her mother, slumped against the wall of a cell. "Mom," she whispered, her voice breaking. Her mother lifted her head, her face bruised but her eyes sharp with recognition. "Emily, you shouldn't be here. We're getting you out," Emily said, her resolve hardening. Lena attached her device to the cell's keypad, but as it hummed, the alarms grew louder. Suddenly, heavy steel doors slammed shut at both ends of the corridor, trapping them inside. "Shit," Lena cursed. "They've locked us in." Emily pounded on the cell door, panic rising. "Mom, how do we open this?" Her mother's voice cut through the chaos, calm and steady. "There's a maintenance hatch under the floor. It leads to the sublevels. You can escape through there." Emily scrambled to find it, spotting a loose tile. She pried it up, revealing a dark tunnel below. "Come on, Mom." "I can't," her mother said, her tone heavy with regret. "The cell's magnetized, I'm stuck. You have to go without me." "No," Emily's voice cracked, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm not leaving you." "You must," her mother insisted. "Find help. Come back for me. Please, Emily." The weight of her mother's words crushed her, but Emily knew there was no other way. With a final, anguished glance, she followed Lena into the tunnel, the hatch clanging shut above them. They crawled through the darkness, the air thick with dust and dampness. After what felt like hours, they emerged in an underground parking garage. A van idled nearby, its driver, a man in a hoodie, waving them over. "Get in. I'm a friend." They scrambled inside, and the van peeled out, tires squealing as it sped away from the facility. Emily turned to the driver, her voice shaky. "Who are you?" "Name's Marcus," he said, keeping his eyes on the road. "I worked with your mother. We're part of the resistance against the Syndicate." "Resistance?" Emily repeated, her mind reeling. Marcus nodded. "We've been fighting them for years. Your mother was one of us until she went into hiding. We'll regroup and plan the next step, but first, we need to get you to safety." Emily sank back into the seat, exhaustion washing over her. She had escaped, but her mother remained a captive. The fight was far from over, but now she had allies and a flicker of hope. The safe house was a small, weathered cabin hidden deep in the woods, a sanctuary far from the city's dangers. Inside, Emily sat at a rickety wooden table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that steamed in the cool air. Marcus, a gruff resistance fighter, had insisted she take it, but the warmth couldn't melt the icy fear gripping her heart. Across the table, Lena and Marcus pored over a blueprint of the Syndicate's facility, their expressions tense. "We're running out of time," Marcus said, his voice a low rumble. They'll move her soon, somewhere we can't reach. If we're doing this, it's tonight. Emily's pulse quickened. How do we get in? That place is locked down tight. Lena pointed to a faint line on the blueprint, snaking beneath the building. The maintenance tunnel you found during your last break-in. It's our way past their defenses. But it's risky. They'll have tightened security, since you tripped their alarms. I don't care, Emily said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her chest. She's my mom. I'm going back for her. Marcus met her gaze, then nodded. We'll need help. I can call in some resistance fighters, people your mother trusted. By dusk, the cabin hummed with quiet determination. A dozen resistance members arrived, former agents, scientists, and hackers, united against the Syndicate's tyranny. Emily's hope flickered brighter. She wasn't alone in this fight. Lena laid out the plan. A small team would slip through the maintenance tunnel while the others staged a diversion at the main entrance. Emily insisted on joining the rescue team. She's my mother, she said, meeting Lena's skeptical look with unwavering resolve. I'm not waiting here. Fine. Lena relented. But you stick with me. No reckless moves. As night cloaked the woods, they set out. The drive back to the city was silent, tension thick in the air. Emily's mind churned with memories of her mother, her strength, her secrets, and the haunted look in her eyes when they'd parted. She tightened her grip on the stun gun at her hip, steeling herself for what lay ahead. They parked a few blocks from the facility, splitting into two groups. Marcus led the diversion team, while Lena, Emily, and Jax, a wiry hacker with nimble fingers, headed for the maintenance hatch. The storm had cleared, leaving the night crisp and still, but Emily's nerves buzzed like live wires. At the hatch, Jax cracked the lock in seconds, the metal creaking as they lifted it. Emily descended first, her flashlight piercing the tunnel's damp darkness. The walls were slick with grime, the air heavy, but she pressed forward, her heartbeat echoing in her ears. A sudden clang rang out behind them. Lena stiffened. What was that? Jax's face paled. They're on to us. Before they could move, a Syndicate agent dropped into the tunnel, gun drawn. Lena tackled him in a flash, but another appeared, then another. Emily's stun gun hummed, dropping one with a sharp crackle. Shouts multiplied, too many to count. Run! Lena yelled, pushing Emily ahead. They bolted through the tunnel, footsteps pounding behind them. Jax reached the ladder first, scrambling up to the inner hatch. He punched in the code, and it hissed open. They spilled onto the detention level, slamming the hatch shut as the pursuit closed in. Emily gasped for air, but there was no pause. The corridor loomed ahead, lined with steel cells. She raced to the one where she'd last seen her mother, peering through the window. Her mother sat inside, bruised and weary, but alive. Mom, Emily whispered, her voice cracking. Her mother's head snapped up, eyes wide. Emily, you came back. Of course I did, Emily said, tears pricking her eyes. We're getting you out. Lena slapped a device onto the keypad, her fingers a blur. The alarm screeched to life, red lights pulsing. Marcus's diversion had begun. Gunfire and chaos erupted above, pulling guards away. The cell door clicked open, and Emily rushed in, wrapping her mother in a desperate hug. I'm so sorry I left you, she choked out. Her mother held her tight, voice trembling. You're here now. That's enough. Boots thundered in the corridor, cutting their moment short. Lena glanced back. Move. They darted toward the exit, but a figure blocked their path, a tall man in a sleek suit, his eyes glinting with malice. Emily knew him from the Polaroid. Victor, the Syndicate's leader. Dr. Thompson. He purred, nodding to her mother. And her fearless daughter. A touching reunion. Her mother stepped in front of Emily. Let them go, Victor. This is about me. His smile was sharp. Not anymore. Your girl's a fighter. She could be valuable. Emily's stomach twisted, but she squared her shoulders. You're not taking either of us. Victor chuckled, eyeing her stun gun. Bold words. But you're no match for me. Before Emily could blink, her mother charged Victor, her enhanced strength slamming him into the wall. "Run!" she shouted. The corridor exploded into chaos. Syndicate agents swarmed in, but resistance fighters stormed through the far door, weapons flashing. Emily grabbed her mother's hand, and they ran, Lena and Jax fending off attackers behind them. They burst into the parking garage, diving into the van. Marcus floored it, tires squealing as they sped away. Explosions lit up the night, the Resistance's final blow to the facility. Emily clung to her mother, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's over," she whispered. "You're safe." Her mother brushed a hand through Emily's hair, voice thick. "Because of you, Emily. You saved me." As the facility shrank in the rearview mirror, Emily felt the weight of fear lift. The Syndicate was shattered, their crimes laid bare. Justice would come. But for now, she had her mother. That was everything. Epilogue. Weeks later, Emily sat on the porch of their new farmhouse, miles from the city's scars. The air was fresh, the sky a clear blue. Her mother stepped out, 2 mugs of tea in hand, and settled beside her. "Trials start next month," her mother said. "The Syndicate's leaders, their labs, everything's unraveling." Emily nodded, sipping her tea. "And the formula? Gone," her mother said firmly. "I destroyed it. No one should have that power." Relief flooded Emily. Good. They sat quietly, watching the sun sink below the fields. The wounds of their ordeal lingered, but they had time now, and each other. "Thank you," her mother murmured, "for never giving up." Emily took her hand, smiling softly. "We're family. That's what we do." As stars dotted the sky, Emily knew they'd face whatever came next together.